Let's talk about Apple's Vision Pro headset, a device that could either cement Apple as the greatest tech company in history or fail as hard as Zuckerberg's Roblox for adults. There is no in between. The Vision Pro headset is a device that will allow its users to interact in augmented reality, a blended view of the real world and digital assets, like images and video. Gone are the days where our basic digital content exists in 2D space, bringing our movies, work meetings, and creative designs into 3D. The headset was announced at this year's Worldwide Developers Conference, where customers and investors got to digest the device's hardware specs, functions, and notably, its price. The Vision Pro is set to hit stores early next year at a hefty price tag of $3,500. This was a pretty big announcement for Apple, considering that it's the first major product set for release since the Apple Watch in 2014. And it's coming at a time where I think many of us are starting to question how much further Apple can take the iPhone. The numbers say iPhone sales aren't slowing down, with Apple generating over $200 billion in iPhone sales alone. But from a user perspective, I notice there's less and less to get excited about. So the big question is, will the Apple Vision Pro be a success? As much as I'd like to say yes, here's why I'm skeptical. First and foremost, the price point. $3,500 isn't cheap, to say the least. At $3,500, you're pretty much pricing out a majority of non-professional customers. I can see production and creative businesses paying that, no problem, but the average person, $3,500 is more expensive than a maxed out iPhone 14, more expensive than most of their MacBooks, and about half the price of Apple's biggest and baddest machine to date, the Mac Pro. Apple's big four devices are the iPhone, iPad, Mac, and Apple Watch. The most expensive device, the Mac. The product less commonly owned by customers, the Mac. Simply put, not everyone can afford the higher price tier at Apple. But maybe that's the point. Apple is the powerhouse we know today in part because of how they embraced luxury for their branding. From the very first attempts at a personal computer, aesthetics were a priority for Apple. It was about functionality meeting sex appeal. And from that point on, each of Apple's devices was designed and priced with that in mind. To own Apple is to have money. To own Apple is to have status. Here's where I question the method. The Vision Pro is a luxury product being released in a non-luxurious time. Many consumers have been thrashed by inflation for the better part of 2 years, which has forced them to change their spending habits and refocus on the necessities. But I'm not suggesting the price of eggs is keeping people from buying the Vision Pro. It has much more to do with what the Fed did with interest rates. The higher rates we're seeing in mortgages, auto loans, and other forms of lending is turning already expensive purchases like a home into even more expensive items. These larger purchases are financial milestones for everyone, including Apple's more affluent customers. Now, these costs might make someone think twice about splooging on an AR headset. In a similar light, if we want to get a bit deeper into finance, because of higher interest rates, there is an immediate and significant opportunity cost to buying expensive items like the Vision Pro. Money spent on the headset could be invested in an asset like treasury bonds, or even deployed in a high-yield savings account. The opportunity cost being the 4% interest you'd earn. Another thing that gives me pause is the practicality of the Vision Pro. Coming from those that got exclusive demos, the headset is heavy. It isn't made out of lightweight plastics, and the hardware making this thing function is extensive. Several cameras, computer components, and the screens are a lot to have strapped to your face. The weight is certainly a concern. If it wasn't, Apple wouldn't have made the decision to have the battery be external to the headset. And that brings up another point. A 2-hour battery life. Relative to today's technology, 2 hours isn't much at all. No long movies, no full-length sports, and for gaming, any real gamer will tell you, 2 hours is nothing. Over time, Apple's products have been designed to be sleeker and less cumbersome while improving usability through things like longer battery life and faster charging. With that said, the Vision Pro feels like a few steps backward. We have a heavy, short-lasting device. And I know that's putting the technology aside. The technology itself is amazing. No knocks there. The single biggest reason I'm skeptical about the Vision Pro is that we've seen plenty of failed attempts at mainstream virtual and augmented reality before. We saw Google's Glass in the 2010s, Oculus around the same time, and before that, all kinds of interactive gaming going back decades. But I want to focus on Meta here. After acquiring Oculus in 2014, Meta launched an aggressive campaign to bring the many successes of Facebook into the metaverse. But it's since been a struggle for them to provide a service people actually want to adopt. In 2022, Meta lost nearly $14 billion on their VR venture. And I think that has to do with the fact the Meta Quest headset is really only being used for gaming and not much else. In an annual survey conducted in 2022 by security.org, 40% of respondents never even used a headset. And those that did, gaming was the most common use, with work activities coming in at a measly 2%. We're a long way from the metaverse replacing classrooms, office spaces, and social meetings. The Quest headset is a gaming headset, and even that is a niche in the overall industry. I recognize comparing VR to augmented reality is like apples and oranges, but Meta's struggles paint a picture of what obstacles Apple faces moving forward. At the core, what can they do to convince me to wear something on my face with a battery in my pocket? How much does Apple need to improve on our current forms of digital interaction for the Vision Pro to be a better alternative? Going back to that annual survey, aside from a majority of respondents saying cost is why they don't want to own a VR headset, a near majority said they simply don't need or want it. I don't doubt there's an emerging market for these devices. Companies like Apple and Meta wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't. But I do doubt the rate at which that market grows to a meaningful size. You have to remember that a huge catalyst for Meta and VR and AR and everything in between was the pandemic. For 2 years, the market for these headsets looked gargantuan because damn near the whole world was the market. Am I completely writing off the Vision Pro because previous attempts have yet to be successful? I'm not. But what I think is more likely to happen is this first version will not achieve the mass adoption they're looking for. Instead, it'll be more of a proof of concept for a number of creative professionals and those that can afford it. Through those initial users, Apple will be able to better understand what features are most useful and what features are most needed to take the Vision Pro mainstream. With all of that said, y'all need to know that I'm far from an Apple hater, even if I sound like one in this video. In fact, I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm part of the cult. I love Apple products, all of them, always have. Their products are user-friendly, beautifully designed, and most importantly, they represent a powerful brand of messaging. Hey, look at me, I'm sexy. So although I'm skeptical about the Vision Pro's initial success, I would not be surprised if I'm absolutely wrong and the headset revolutionizes the way we interact with digital content. The bottom line is this. If VR and augmented reality are the future, we're still in the early phases of the technology. It's expensive, unproven, and bound to go through growing pains as customers slowly adopt it. And that's my take on Apple's new Vision Pro. But let me know what you guys think about it. Remember that even if you aren't directly invested in Apple, if you own an index fund, chances are Apple is in it. So let's be optimistic, but realistic as well. Realistically optimistic. Yeah, and that's all I have for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, consider commenting, liking, and subscribing if you haven't already. It is all greatly appreciated, I promise you guys that. As always, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care of yourself, and best of luck.